Okay, we are back for Zoom 2, and go ahead and put your name in the chat box to sign in for me. And we'll get started here in just a minute. While you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and get my screen set up. Let's try that a different way. It's over here. So if I can put that there. Okay. Looks like we got someone else joining us. If you're just now joining us, go ahead and put your name in the chat box to sign in. Okay, so earlier today, we talked about main idea and theme and text structure, sorry. I have a cough drop in my mouth this morning, so I'm sound a little funny. If you did miss the Zoom this morning, it will be posted here in just a little bit, probably in the next I'll try to have it in the next hour or so posted, and you'll be able to find that in your assignments. So what you can do is you can go and view that, and you can fill out the little Google form that says that you watched it. After you watch it, submit that, and you'll get credit for watching that Zoom after the fact. I'll do that every day. I do that just in case somebody misses. They can go back and watch it, or if you just need to go back and watch information over again because you didn't quite get something or couldn't remember something, it'll be in there in your assignments every day in the afternoon. Okay, so I will just go ahead and just jump right in, and we're just going to go over the lessons that we did. The first one was this lesson 5, and I am going to hold on just a moment for me. Let me get this set up. Okay, technology. Okay, it's great when it works right. I'm going to try to make this as big as I can so you guys can see it better and I can see it better because my vision is terrible. But the first lesson that we went over was main idea. Main idea is the most important point in a story or a passage. Sometimes the main idea is stated directly. Other times, you can figure out the main idea by looking for key details that reveal what the text is mainly about. To use details to determine the main idea in a passage, you must distinguish between important and unimportant details. Excuse me. The summary. Now I have lost my chat box. I'm sorry. Anyways, the summary is just a short restatement of the main idea. It's the most important details in a passage. It does not contain readers' opinions about the topic or judgments about the text. It's just simply a short summary of the story or passage. For example, the Native Americans of the North American plains depended on buffalo meat for food. For food. They used the hide to make clothing and teepee shelters. They made tools and weapons from buffalo bones. From the hair of the buffalo, Native Americans made rope. So, the main idea of this short little passage here um, is that Native Americans living on the plains got much of what they needed to survive from buffalo. The main idea of the paragraph is not stated directly. The details describe the many ways that Native Americans benefited from the buffalo. If we were to summarize this, it would be that the buffalo provided Native Americans with food, clothing, shelter, tools, weapons, and other supplies. Let's read this next example. Many Native Americans lived in the Great Plains region of the United States and Canada. In the United States, this is an area that lies between the Rocky Mountains and the Mississippi River and extends to the Rio Grande in what is now Texas. The Native Americans chose this area because of its resources. Many groups settled near the Missouri River where fresh water, wood, and many plant foods were available. What is the best summary of this paragraph? Okay, they do give us the answer here, but let's look at it. Native Americans settled in the Great Plains area because there were plenty of resources. This is the short, sweet version of what they just told us in this paragraph right here. Okay, so C is our answer. And if we look at these other answers real quick, Native Americans settled in the Great Plains area of the United States and Canada. That is not what the paragraph was about. That was just one little piece of the information. If we look at B, the Great Plains lie between the Rocky Mountains and the Mississippi River and extend to the Rio Grande. Did it mention this? Yes, but that has nothing to do with the main idea or summary of this paragraph. The area near the Missouri River offers resources such as fresh water, wood, and plants. Yes, again, that's a little piece of it, but it's not the whole summary. C would be the whole summary of the paragraph. Okay, let's read this one. Before Native Americans of the plains were introduced by two horses by Spanish explorers, they traveled and hunted on foot. They used dogs to pull sleds that contained their belongings. All of a family's possessions had to fit inside a sled. This limited the number of possessions they could acquire. Horses were greatly prized by Native Americans. They called them sky dogs. They believed that the horses were large dogs sent as gifts from the Great Spirit in the sky. They told many stories about how they had acquired horses. Horses changed the food supplies of Native Americans. Hunting on horseback was much easier than on foot. It allowed Native Americans to keep up with a moving herd and buffalo herd of buffalo and to provide more meat for their families, as well as more hides, bones, and other parts of the buffalo that were used in daily life. On horseback, Native Americans could travel greater distances in a day. The horses could pull heavier loads of supplies and possessions, so families could acquire more goods and larger teepees. The introduction of horses significantly changed many aspects of life for the Native Americans. Okay, so look at question 1. Which of these is the main idea of paragraph 1? The main idea is the same as that short summary that we talked about earlier. Okay, so if we look at D, let's just start from the bottom up. What is the main idea of the paragraph? Number one, this limited the number of possessions they could acquire. This did mention uh, that was a factor, but that is not the point of paragraph one. So that's not it. All of the family's belongings had to fit on the sled. Yes, it mentioned that, but that's not what the whole paragraph is about. Native Americans used dogs to pull sleds that contained their belongings. Yes, they did, but that's not the whole summary or the main idea. What is A, before they were introduced to horses by Spanish explorers, Native Americans hunted and traveled on foot. And a lot of times, if you're looking at a paragraph, usually, or quite often, I should say, it'll be that first statement that they make. And if you look at this first sentence, they tell you exactly what the paragraph is going to be about in that first sentence. Okay. So the answer to that one was A. What is the main idea of paragraph 2? Okay, let's look at 2 again. Horses were greatly prized by Native Americans. They called them sky dogs. They believed that horses were large dogs sent as a gift from the Great Spirit in the sky. They told many stories about how they had acquired horses. Okay, so if we look here, Native Americans told many stories about how they had acquired horses. Yes, they did, but is that the summary of the paragraph or the main idea? No. Native Americans call the horses sky dogs. Yes, that's a detail, but that's not the summary. So it's not B. Native Americans believed that horses were gifts from the Great Spirit. That was what they believed, but that is not the point of that whole paragraph. But if you look at D, the horses were greatly prized by Native Americans. So all the statements that they make is leading up to the main idea or the summary that the horses were greatly prized, which means they were greatly appreciated by the Native Americans. So the answer to number 2 is D. Number 3, what is the main idea of the third paragraph? Well, let's read it. Horses changed the food supplies of Native Americans. Hunting on horseback was much easier than on foot. It allowed Native Americans to keep up with a moving herd of buffalo and to provide more meat for their families, as well as more hides, bones, and other parts of the buffalo that were used in daily life. Okay, so if we look at D, let's just start from the bottom up. Native Americans got more food and other supplies from buffalo. Yes, that's true, but that does not summarize the whole third paragraph. Horses changed the food supplies of Native Americans. Yes, but it's not the whole summary. On horseback, Native Americans could keep up with buffalo. That's true, but it's not summarizing that whole paragraph. The whole paragraph is about this statement right here. A, hunting on horseback was easier than on foot. They just basically give you supporting details and evidence to support this one statement. Okay. So number 4, which best summarizes the passage? So the passage is the whole shebang, the whole story here. Okay, so if we look, okay, A says the Spanish explorers introduced horses to Native Americans who thought of horses as big dogs. The horses were greatly prized. That is a portion of it, but that's not the summary of the whole passage. Native Americans hunted and traveled on foot after Spanish explorers introduced horses. Native Americans prized the horses and used them to haul their belongings, hunt buffalo, and travel. All true statements, but that does not summarize the whole passage. If we look at this one, you'll see Native Americans greatly prized horses. As a result of having horses, Native Americans had greater access to their main food supply, buffalo. This is the correct answer because it summarizes that whole passage here. This is just another statement that is included in the passage, so that does not say the summary of the whole thing. Okay, so I'm just going to move right along. Let me see here. Let's see. Okay. Okay, this was your next assignment. Daily update, Saturday, June 15th. It is going to be busy. I'm gonna have to make this a little bit bigger if I can. Oh, no, that's as big as it's gonna go. Okay, it is going to be busy tonight. As usual, the dining room is open for dinner. However, the reception room is closed for a graduation party of 25 people. Do not seat other customers in this room. The party will require all workers to observe reception rules. This means new reservations and walk-in seating will be limited to the main dining room. Extra event staff will be working the reception. Because the reception room is closed, there may be delays in seating customers. In case of delays, please ask customers to wait at the bar. Give customers whose reservations have been delayed one free drink while they wait. Okay, so question number 1. You work as a hostess at this restaurant. You will be working this Saturday evening. What is the main idea being addressed in the second paragraph of the above date? So we're talking about this second paragraph here. The party will require all workers to observe reception rules. Okay, just like we talked about, a lot of times they're going to give you the main idea in that first sentence here. Okay, so if we look down here, the best answer or the most closely related answer is going to be reception rules must be followed this evening. Okay, up here says the party will require all workers to observe reception rules. Yes, it doesn't really say that it's understaffed. As a matter of fact, it says extra help was going to be working that night. So that's not the answer. Yes, the restaurant is fully booked, but that's not the point. The point is they're going to have to observe the rules tonight. Because if they don't observe the rules, then it's not going to run smoothly. All patrons can have a free drink. Yes, that's true, but that is not the point of the second paragraph. Walk-ins can be seated in the main dining room. Again, that's true, but not the main idea or what is wanting to be, what they're wanting to get across to you. Okay. Number 2, which of the details applies to walk-in customers at the restaurant who are not part of the graduation party? So what I do when I come across a question like this is I think about that question and then I go back up here and I look for a clue where it talks about walk-in customers. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to find right here. It talks about walk-in seating. So this means new reservations and walk-in seating will be limited to the main dining room. That means they're going to have to go into the main dining room. So if you look at your answers down here, it says customers should be seated in the main dining room. So that one was easy to pick out. Sometimes if you go through and you're reading these answers, it's just going to confuse you. So like I said, I always go, okay, what are they wanting to know? They're wanting to know about walk-in customers. So I go up here and I look where it's talking about the walk-in customers and I see what it says. And it makes it easier to pick out the right answer here. Okay. Some of these, again, they may be true, they may be talked about, but that's not what they're asking. They're asking about walk-in customers. Okay. Let's see. This one was a procedure manual for a dental technician. Our company makes dental crowns, bridges, and dentures. The dental technician is responsible for making these products for our clients. As a dental technician, it is your job to follow the procedures that make the highest quality devices. And then it gives a list of procedures. It says the dentist sends a mold of the patient's mouth. Use the mold to make a plastic model of the patient's teeth and mouth. When the plastic is hard, check the model, check the size and shape of all teeth, measure the gum line. Then it says make the customized product based on your measurements, apply porcelain in layers, continue until the size and shape are correct. The tooth can be shaped until it is the same as the original tooth. Okay, so the next question is, as a dental technician, you are responsible for making customized products for customers. What is the main idea expressed in the first paragraph? So right up here is the first paragraph, and it is all about the dental technician. Right here, if you look, it talks about the dental technician. And it says is responsible for making these products for the clients. Okay, so if you look through your answers down here, the client makes devices. That's not exactly, that's the client, that's the customer, that's not the dental technician. So we're going to X that one out. The company makes crowns, bridges, and dentures. Yes, that's true, but that is not exactly what they're talking about. They're talking about what the dental technician does. Specific procedures make the best quality devices. That may be true, but we're talking about what the dental technician does. So you get to this one, it says the dental technician makes the products. Okay. Again, pick out what they're talking about and then go and see which answer is the best answer. Okay, question 4. Which detail in the manual supports the idea that the dental technician makes customized products? Okay, in the manual, the idea the technician, okay. So if you look at the answers, let's see. When the plastic is hard, check the model. The company makes crowns, bridges, and dentures. The dental technician is responsible for making devices. The tooth can be shaped until it's the same as the original. Okay, so if we're making something that's customized, that means that we can tailor it or make it to fit the customer. So it is customized for a customer. So being able to shape a tooth, something that is exactly the same shape as somebody's tooth, that would be this answer right here. The tooth can be shaped until it is the same as the original. That's the detail that supports the idea that the dental technician makes customized products. Okay, all of these may be true, but this is the best answer that describes what they're asking for here. Okay, we're just going to move right along. Let's see. This one was about determining the theme and summarizing. So again, a summary is a short statement that presents the most important details of a piece of writing. Summarizing a literary text involves reviewing the text to recall the setting, important characters, key events, organize the events in order in which they happen, and then stating them as briefly as possible. In our lesson earlier, we talked about a summary being able to write what the story is about in like 10 words or less, or just a couple of sentences. That is a summary, which also is the main idea. In literature, theme refers to the central idea or truth about life that a work reveals. A theme can also raise an important question about the human experience. The theme of a work is not a summary of its plot, nor is it necessarily a lesson or a guide for behavior. Sometimes a theme is stated directly. At other times, readers must infer the theme based on events, characters, and setting. A literary work can have more than one theme. For example, in our lesson earlier, we talked about the story of Little Red Riding Hood, and the theme of Little Red Riding Hood was stranger danger, or don't talk to strangers. That was the theme. Okay, another example is given here. Angie and Ella were waiting for their sandwiches to arrive, and Ella looked past Angie toward the cafe door. Well, Ella said, Miss Perfect has arrived. Angie gave Ella a quizzical look. That's Sophia, a woman I work with, Ella explained. She's extremely critical of others, judges people's clothes, their hair, the way they hold their coffee cup, just brutal. And she's one to talk, Ella continued. She's got this annoying nasal voice and aggressive makeup, and she wears these prim little skirts and blouses that button at the collar, and the way she tilts her head when she's talking to you. I see, said Angie calmly. Judgmental, supercritical, brutal, even. Ella turned her gaze from Sophia to Angie. Ella opened her mouth to say something and then closed it and placed a hand over her heart. So the summary of this little story is that Angie helps her friend Ella recognize that she is being just as critical as the coworker that she was complaining about. She was saying how critical this girl was that she worked with, and she criticizes everybody and she's judgmental and da 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 da. And then she went on to talk about everything that was wrong with this girl, and in doing so, she was doing the exact same thing that she was complaining about. And this happens all the time. The theme clues to the theme of the passage lie in the behavior of its two characters. So one character sees a coworker whom she harshly criticizes for being too judgmental. The other character calls attention to her friend's harsh criticism. So what does this passage reveal about life? The theme is that it's sometimes easier to recognize in others their faults, but we don't always recognize our own fault. So in this story, Ella was very critical of how judgmental this girl was and didn't even realize that she was doing exactly the same thing. So that is the theme. Okay, let's read this passage. As Joseph sat on the stage of the auditorium, his heart raced and rivulets of sweat ran from his neck down his chest. His knees trembled. This was not how he'd imagined his first lecture as an assistant professor would go. Just this morning, he'd practiced yet again in front of the mirror and impressed himself with his confidence and smooth delivery. But now he was a wreck. He wanted to bolt from the room, drive far away, and never again speak in public. Perhaps I'll become a hermit, he was thinking when he heard Dean Scheller introduce him to the large audience. Joseph walked to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at the expectant students. Breathe, smile, breathe again. Picture the audience doing something silly, he reminded himself. It's an auditorium full of young people so hungry for knowledge that they are eating pages from their books. The thought amused him and caused him to truly smile. As he smiled, the agony of stage fright lessened and he began his lecture. Okay, which detail offers a clue to the theme and should also be included in the summary? Well, this is the example and they've given us the answer, which is B. Joseph uses his inner resources to banish his fear of speaking. So even though he was scared and he got up to the podium, he was able to calm himself by breathing, smiling, and putting his situation into perspective. Those were his inner resources that he used. So the answer to that is B. It's also important for like we talk about inferences, or inferring. We can sometimes rescue ourselves from a difficult situation. That is what he was inferring. That was what was inferred in this paragraph. Okay. Okay, we're going to read this, and I apologize. I've got my questions spread out here, but I had to fit them all on this page. Let's see. In the following excerpt from The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Tom, Huck, and Joe have run away from home and decided to settle on Jackson's Island. Tom stirred up the other pirates, and they all clattered away with a shout, and in a minute or two were stripped and chasing after and tumbling over each other in the shallow, limpid water of the white sandbar. They felt no longing for the little village sleeping in the distance beyond the majestic waste of water. A vagrant current or a slight rise in the river had carried off their raft, but this only gratified them, since its going was something like the burning of a bridge between them and civilization. They came back to camp, wonderfully refreshed, glad-hearted, and ravenous, and they soon had the campfire blazing up again. Huck found a spring of clear, cold water close by, and the boys made cups of broad oak or hickory leaves and felt that water, sweetened with such wildwood charm as that, would be a good enough substitute for coffee. While Joe was slicing bacon for breakfast, Tom and Huck asked him to hold on a minute. They stepped to a promising nook in the riverbank and threw in their lines. Almost immediately, they had reward. Joe had not had time to get impatient before they were back again with some handsome bass, a couple of sun perch, and a small catfish, provisions enough for quite a family. They fried the fish with bacon and were astonished, for no fish had ever seemed so delicious before. They did not know that the quicker a freshwater fish is on the fire after he is caught, the better he is. And they reflected little upon what a sauce, open air exercise, bathing, and a large ingredient of hunger make too. They lay around the shade after breakfast while Huck had a smoke and then went off through the woods on an exploring expedition. They discovered that the island was about 3 miles long and a quarter of a mile wide, and that the shore it lay closest to was only separated from it by a narrow channel hardly 200 yards wide. They took a swim about every hour or so. It was close upon the middle of the afternoon when they got back to camp. They were too hungry to stop to fish, but they fared sumptuously upon cold ham and then threw themselves down in the shade to talk. But the talk soon began to drag and then died. The stillness, the solemnity that brooded in the woods, and the sense of loneliness began to tell upon the spirits of the boys. They fell to thinking. A sort of underlying longing crept up on them. This took dim shape presently. It was budding homesickness. Even Finn, the red-handed, was dreaming of his doorsteps and empty hogsheds, but they were all ashamed of their weakness, and none was brave enough to speak to his thought. This is an older story, so the speech is a little bit hard to understand just because of the way it's written. But basically, we have 3 young boys, and they decided to run away to this little island, and they made their little raft, and they took them some food and their fishing poles, and they were just having a good old time and thought they were just, having the best day. They didn't care about anything else. They'd ran away, and they were just going to live their best life. But then when things kind of calmed down and they got bored, then they all started to kind of realize, hey, I'm kind of homesick. I miss my house. I miss my barn. I miss my hogs, things like that. Um, so that's kind of the gist of that story. Which detail is most important to include in a summary of the passage? Um, so if you're just summarizing, again, that's just that little 10 words or less, basically the summary that I just gave you. Um, so what's the most important to include? The description of the food, not necessarily that, I mean, that was a part of the story, but it's not a main idea. The fact that Huck smoked after breakfast, that is not really important to the story. Um, what the island, or that the island is 3 miles long and a quarter of a mile wide, that was just a little detail, but it's not the most important. If I was trying to tell you what this story is about, like I just did, I would include how the boys' feeling about running away changes over time. So in the beginning, like I said, they were just high on the hog, having a good time, 3 boys running off, doing what they wanted to do. But then by the end of the story, when they got kind of bored and things slowed down, they started to get homesick. So this is the most important, how the boys' feelings about running away changed over time. Okay, number 2, what is the best summary of the passage? Okay, the summary, like I said, it's just that uh, little explanation I gave you about the story. Is it that the 3 boys have a great time camping and exploring after running away to an island until they start to feel lonely and homesick? That sounds like a good answer. If you look at the other answers, 3 boys set up a campfire, they make dinner, they eat fish and bacon, they go off to explore the woods. Later, they go for a swim and eat ham. These are all details, but if you're talking about the main idea of the story, that's not the main idea. That's not what the point of the story was. C, 3 boys regret having run away as soon as they reach the island and hatch a plan to return home safely. That was not part of the story. Yes, they kind of regretted because they were homesick, but it doesn't mention anything about they hatched a plan to return home safely. So that's not the answer. B says 3 boys learn how to take care of themselves and have a rewarding getaway on an island. That is not what the story is about. That's not the main idea. So the answer is A. Let's see. Number 3, which of these best states the theme of this passage? Okay, remember the theme is the structure. It's the buildup of the story. The theme could be talking about details, compare and contrast. It could be telling a story in sequential or chronological order, things like that. That's the setting up of the story. Okay, so let's talk about which statement is the best theme. Okay, playing outdoors is always good for the spirits. That's not really what the story is about. We are never lonely when in the company of friends. Adventure away from home aren't always as much fun as one expects. The force of nature can be dangerous and even deadly. Well, we didn't really talk about that in the story. Yes, having friends is fun, but that's not what the theme of the story. The theme of the story is adventures aren't always as fun as they seem or as one expects. Okay. Part B, what text evidence best supports your answer to part A? Okay, so this is our answer, and we're going to say which one of these best supports that answer. Okay, so they came back to camp wonderfully refreshed, glad-hearted, and ravenous, and they soon had the campfire blazing up again. Well, that doesn't support this, so that's not the answer. They lay around in the shade after breakfast while Huck had a smoke and then went off through the woods on an exploring expedition. That's not what supports the answer. They were too hungry to stop to fish, but they fared sumptuously upon cold ham and then threw themselves down in the shade to talk. That doesn't really explain our answer up here. Let's look at D. The stillness, the solemnity that brooded in the woods, and the sense of loneliness began to tell upon the spirit of the boys. So they're starting to get lonely and homesick. And that would be a good supporting evidence to support this answer right here. Okay. Number 4, which event happens after the friends explore the island? So we're talking about sequence. What happens next? What happened before or after? Okay. Which event happens after the friends explore the island? Okay. A, the raft is carried off by the river's current. They eat cold ham and then sit in the shade and talk. Tom and Huck catch fish and they cook it with bacon for breakfast, or they make a blazing campfire and use hickory leaves to make coffee. So in the very beginning, it says, if we look over here, in a minute or two, let's see, they were in the limpid water of the white sandbar. So they're at the island and they felt no longing for the little village beyond the majestic waste of water. Then it says a vagrant current or slight rise in the river had carried off their raft, but this only gratified them since its going was something like the burning of a bridge between them and civilization. So their little raft has washed off, got carried off by the water after. So they got to the little island, and their craft was carried off by the river's current. Yes, they did some of these other things, but this is what happened first as soon as they got to the island. Okay, hold on. I think I said that wrong. Which event happens after the friends explore the island? Oh, my bad. Let me please ignore that, and I'm going to erase this. I read that question totally wrong. And it's so easy in this story. Okay, so it's asking after they explored. Okay, let's see. Let's see where they explored the island. They discovered that the island was about 3 miles long and a quarter mile wide, and that the shore it lay close was separated. Okay. Stillness, solemnity brooded. Okay. Okay, this is what they did after they explored. They ate the cold ham and sat in the shade. And it says that right here. Sat in the shade to talk. Okay, sorry about that, guys. I read that way too fast. But it's kind of tricky sometimes. You have to look for those little details, and it's asking the event that happens after they explored the island. So this is the one that occurred after they explored the island. Okay, question 5. Which event happens after the friends explore the island? Is it that the raft is carried off? Oh, this is the exact same question. I didn't even need that one. Okay, ignore that. Okay. See, even teachers make mistakes. So let's go to analyzing text structure. Okay, I still have everybody with me. We are getting towards the end of this lesson, so just bear with me. Okay, authors of informational text organize their information in ways that help readers understand the text. The term text structure refers to the way the information is organized. Common text structures include description, sequence, cause and effect, problem and solution, and comparison and contrast. Informational writing can have a main text structure and one or more underlying structures. Okay, so again, it's just giving you the examples of description, sequence, cause and effect, problem and solution, comparison, and contrast. And these were all covered in our lesson today. So description, it's the details, remember, like we talked about. It's all those supporting details. The text structure is the way that the story is structured. It describes the relationship between two species, perhaps cows and bacteria. As a part of a description, it presents details about important roles that cows and bacteria play in their mutual survival. Cause and effect. Let's see, on December 7th, 1941, the Japanese Air Force attacked a United States naval base in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The bombing came without warning. Many American lives and ships were lost. As a result of the attack, President Franklin D. Roosevelt asked Congress to declare war on Japan, which it did on December 8th. Roosevelt described the day of the attack as a date which will live in infamy. The text structure. The passage mainly uses cause and effect structure. So it's saying because Japan attacked the U.S. naval base, many lives and ships were lost, and the U.S. declared war on Japan. The phrase "as a result" signals the effect of a cause. There is some brief description and sequence, but the underlying text structure is cause and effect. So it is a cause and effect text structure. Writers usually think carefully about how best to organize information that others will read. Readers depend on a writer's structure or pattern of organization to move them along from point to point as they're reading. Okay. Once you have identified the text structure, consider how each section of a text serves the overall structure. Ask yourself these questions. How does each paragraph support the text? How is a paragraph related to the paragraphs before it and after it? How does it contribute to the web or chain of ideas? How do the main sections of the text develop the writer's central message or main idea? So for example, in a building collapse or other disaster, it's essential to find survivors as quickly as possible. Until dogs were used for search and rescue, lives were lost because searches took too long and were often too dangerous for human rescuers. Nowadays, specially trained dogs are used for search and rescue operations. The dogs are often lighter and more agile than human rescuers and can climb over and under debris. Because of dogs' keen sense of smell, they can follow the scent of a missing person after being exposed to the person's scent through clothing or other items. Okay, so let's talk about the text structure of this passage. It's mainly descriptive with underlying problem and solution structure. So for example, the problem, rescues were taking too long. The solution was dog rescuers being used because they can locate people faster than human rescuers can. Okay, let's read this passage. Excuse me. What animal can swim like an eel, walk on land, and breathe by using gills or lungs? It's the salamander. These amazing creatures live in streams, rivers, ponds, lakes, and moist woodlands. When they swim, salamanders use muscles to propel themselves through water. To walk on land, they move one leg at a time. In water, they use gills to breathe, and on land, they use lungs. Some salamanders that have neither gills nor lungs absorb oxygen from water through their skin. Okay, how does paragraph 2 contribute to the development of ideas in the passage? So if we're looking at number 2, it says when they swim, salamanders use muscles, and it's giving how they walk on land, what they do. If they're in water, they use gills to breathe. If they're on land, they use lungs. Some that don't have those use absorbing oxygen through their skin. So it explains, let's see, it describes how salamanders are able to live on land and sea. So it gives examples of how they do both. This is what supports this first paragraph here. Okay, Jacques Cousteau. Ocean explorer and inventor Jacques Cousteau was born in France in 1910. As a boy, he loved the ocean. In the 1930s, he attended the Naval Academy. Cousteau was in his mid-20s when he swam in the ocean with goggles. A whole new world opened to him under the water's surface. The experience set him on a lifelong path of underwater exploration. As a member of the French Navy, Cousteau fought in World War II. He managed to find time to continue his underwater exploration. Cousteau wanted to find a way to stay underwater for longer periods. In 1943, he helped develop the first successful self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, also known as the aqualung. The device follows divers to remain underwater for several hours. In 1950, Cousteau bought a ship that had once been a minesweeper. He converted the ship, which he named the Calypso, to a vessel for diving and scientific research. He financed explorations in the ship by making films and writing books about ocean life. Cousteau had also produced a popular television program for nearly a decade. The program was called The Undersea World of Jacques Cousteau. It explored the diversity of marine life and brought the wonders of the undersea world to millions of households. In 1974, Cousteau established the Cousteau Society. Its mission to carry out ocean explorations and protect the fragile planet. It continues today. In his lifetime, Cousteau received many honors for his contributions to science. Jacques Cousteau died on June 25th, 1997. His legacy of caring for the ocean lives on. Okay, number 1. What text structure does the writer mainly use in this passage? Is it cause and effect, sequence, comparison or contrast, or problem and solution? If we look back at this whole story, we see lots of dates in here. We see in 1910, this is when he was born. In the 1930s, he attended Naval Academy. Let's see, in 1943, he helped develop the first successful contained underwater breathing apparatus, or the scuba, in 1950. So we have all these dates and they seem to be in order. So that is a sequence. And so the answer would be sequence. You'll often hear that described as chronological order as well as sequence. Let's see, part B. Which of these best supports your answer to part A? So what supports this answer? Events in Cousteau's life are presented in time order. The text shows cause and effect of Cousteau's interest in the ocean. The text contrasts the achievements of Cousteau and other explorers, or the text presents problems Cousteau faced. No, it's going to be events in Cousteau's life are presented in order, just like we talked about. 1910, 1930, 43, 50. All of these happen in sequence in the story. So the answer is A. Paragraph 1 is an example of which type of underlying text structure within the main structure. So if we look at paragraph 1, which type of underlying text structure within the main structure? So we know that it's sequence, but let's see what this first paragraph says that gives us another text structure. Ocean explorer and inventor Jacques Cousteau was born in 1910. As a boy, he loved the ocean. In the 1930s, he attended the Naval Academy. Cousteau was in his mid-20s when he swam in the ocean with goggles. A whole new world opened to him. So I would say cause and effect, most likely. The cause was that he swam in the ocean underwater with goggles. The effect is that it opened up a whole new world to him under the water surface. And this is what sparked his interest to start on the path of inventing the scuba. Let's see. What is most likely the reason the author chose the main text structure to tell Cousteau's story? I would say most likely the events of a person's life unfold in a time order. So we don't necessarily start at the end of one's life. We always start at the beginning and then tell what happens next, what happens next. So the events of a person's life unfold in a order, specific order. So the answer would be D. Okay, we are getting, I think this is, yeah, this is the last one. So we're almost there, guys. Okay, let's talk about fire ants. You're watering some new flowers you recently planted when suddenly you feel sharp stings on your foot. You look down to see that you've stepped in the middle of a mound of fire ants. Ouch. It's no wonder that these ants have fire in their name. Fire ants build mounds of soft soil. When a person or animal disturbs the mound, the ants become very agitated. They can quickly crawl up a foot or a leg and inflict multiple painful bites. Fire ant venom causes a burning, itching sensation. The ants' bites can produce white blisters that can become infected if not kept clean. These ants pose a threat. They feed on both animals and plants. Amazingly, fire ants have killed animals many times their size, such as birds, lizards, toads, and even deer. They have damaged young fruit trees and crops such as potatoes, okra, and corn. Is there a bright side to fire ants? They do eat many unwanted insects, pests, including ticks and termites. They also eat some insects that cause damage to trees. Controlling these pesky invaders is not easy. The best control measures involve spraying the mounds with natural and chemical pesticides. The best way to avoid getting bitten by fire ants is to watch your step. Okay, so what text structure does the writer mainly use in this passage? I'm going to say, let's see. I think this one is, let me look here. I'll make sure I'm telling you correctly. This is, I'm thinking it's either cause and effect or description. But let me double check. This one was number. I think this was in lesson 4. Okay, yes, it is description because it gives you a lot of different descriptions about fire ants and how they live, what they do. Let's say, how does paragraph 1 relate to the passage as a whole? It shows, let's see, a vivid example to introduce information about the fire ant. By vivid, it's saying it's giving you this descriptive. It's kind of like giving you a action. You're waiting on some new flowers, and recently that you recently planted, suddenly you feel a sharp sting on your foot. They're giving you a vivid description so that you'll want to keep reading. What did the writer include? Why did the writer include paragraph 4? Paragraph 4 is there, it says, is there a bright side to fire ants? They do eat many unwanted insects, which and pests, which include ticks, termites. They also eat some insects that cause damage. So why do we think that? Okay, they're talking about how horrible the fire ants are in the rest of the story, but then he talks about, oh, there is a bright side. The most likely reason is that it was to balance the negative view of fire ants with some positive information. 7, how does paragraph 5 contribute to the development of passage ideas? Okay, so let's see. Number 5, controlling these pesky invaders is not easy. The best control measures involve spraying the mounds with natural and chemical pesticides, and the best way to avoid getting bitten by fire ants is to watch your step. It describes a solution to the problem stated earlier, and it links the scene in the first paragraph. So it's talking about, it links with the very first paragraph. And often you'll see that in writing. It'll kind of bring it back home and say, hey, it's not easy, but the best way to avoid the bites is to avoid not getting bitten and watch your step in the first place. Okay, so that was all of the lessons for today. If you have a question, you can go ahead and ask me right now. You can use your mic, you can use the chat box. And if we don't have any questions, then I will let you go, but I ask that you please type your name in the chat box for me to sign out. If you didn't get to complete all your assignments today, go ahead and do that. Hopefully you can get that done before we meet next time. Our next meeting, our next class is going to be Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock. And we'll go back over a little bit of this just to refresh, and then we'll move on to our next subject. And if you have any questions for me, you can contact me, you can text me, you can email me, and I will be happy to try to go over anything that you don't understand. And I will see you guys on Wednesday morning, and I hope you have a good start of your week. Thank you.